and we continue learning Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, middle of Hilchos Tefillah, Siman Pei Tes. And we just finished learning the halacha that you're not allowed to eat or drink before davening. And as a direct segue, we pick it up with Sif Dalet. And Sif Dalet teaches us, continuing on the theme of who is yes allowed to eat and drink. A chayla, etc. says Sif Dalet at Soimei, someone who is dying of thirst, and he's mamish starving. They're called chaylim. If they're able to daven If it's impossible to daven, of course, one has to be honest. If he's in this category of chayla, and rata al yispal, he should not daven until he eats. So the Mishnah Berurah explains for us over here. It says Mishnah Berurah v'harayv harbe. It doesn't mean like every person Shabbos morning we're hungry. No, it means you mamish can't handle it. V'yishta sivkatul chavav mashma sheinu mechuyav mitkamer emroitzav atam sham de'achshav bizman hazeh b'lavachi in ma'akvin kol kach mikol makam rotza lechav l'ishas kodim k'dei sheyechavin mutter ein al yarabah. If such a person is a chayla, the only way to be able to daven is if he eats beforehand. He's allowed to do that. We continue with Sifei. He says the Mechaber v'mischol lechol kodim aloisa shachar. Let's say someone began to eat before aloisa shachar. What is the halacha? Sarach lahafsik. He has to stop eating at aloisa. Yishayim sheinu sarach lahafsik. And some say he does not. So comments the Mishnah Berurah over here. Sivkatul chavzayin. He was hischol lechol afilu haya beheter. He did a beheter. What case is it allowed to be eaten before alois? It's more than a half hour before alois. Within a half hour, he's not allowed to start. But nevertheless, less than that, you are allowed to eat until Alois HaShachar. Pretty relevant on Shavuos night, that one is allowed to continue having lishtois less than the shiur until Alois. He doesn't have to stop a half hour beforehand. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sevkatul Chavches that sarich lahafsik. Again, the Mechaber taught us that if you began eating, you have to stop, and then the Yishayimim said you don't have to. So says the Mishnah Berurah Sevkatul Chavches, you have to stop. Sarich lahafsik ishayla amud shach. For mincha, you don't stack much cuts. Why is here different by Alois? Because we have another problem that you can't eat before you daven for yourself. Therefore, asarach lahafsik. Ub'shem hazayir kazu achreinim. Say the achreinim b'shem the zayir. Shafilu kam b'chatzos halayla also litem kodim shemisbalel. Al pi kabbalah, even in the middle of the night, you cannot eat before you daven. Because of prima kodim the davka kshu yashin. If you're sleeping, v'ashad d'shtiya shari, perhaps drinking is mutter midina. Afilu yashin, says the Mishnah Berurah. That's all al pi kabbalah. But midina afilu yashin, even one that slept, mutter lechav alishtes in the middle of the night. Mikol makam nachon lechatchili zarbas. That means if you don't need it, says Mishnah Berurah, you should try to refrain. When Chaim Vital himself was weak, he ate or drank something to strengthen himself. Even al pi kabbalah, only time one should not eat in the middle of the night if he's just doing it to fill up his taiva. You wake up at 5 in the morning before Alois, and if you don't eat something, you're not going to learn, then you should learn. We should always learn. You should eat. Says Mishnah Berurah, to stop. Even if you started eating inappropriately, you only have to stop for kriyishma. That's all derabanan. Cause achreinim sheikr kisvar rishayna. The ikr is like kisvar rishayna that you should stop at Alois. Then be'er berchazamazim esik b'shtiya sar la'afsik l'divrei hakol. Everyone agrees. Then you would have to stop. We continue with Siv Avav. Afilu, just to show how far this Isser goes. What you're not allowed to do before you daven, says the Mechaber, Afilu lilmoid asur mishegiah zman tefillah. Once zman tefillah begins, you're not even allowed to learn. But now quantifies the machaber. That's only someone who davens in Beis Medrash, doesn't go to shul. So we're worried. So if he ever man grish out tefillin, if he doesn't stop right now and daven, he might miss the zmanim. He has a chavrusa and then he goes to shul. Then mutter, he's allowed to keep on learning. Let's say he's giving a shir. It's still mutter. Why? You're going to lose. It's chos harabin davar gadolu. Give a share to the rabbis is an incredible schos. But people are not going to learn afterwards, and therefore such a person would not have to stop even at the zman. Says Mishnah Berurah of Kata Lamed Lilmod is also a Talemer Lahascha Lilmod to start. Avlam Kvar Isla Filu Sha'achar Shegia Zman Shavino Paisik, you don't have to stop. If you guesstimate, if you evaluate, that you'll be able to daven afterwards. When it comes to Kriyishma, din daraisa zar lavsik lekraisai. Why? Because you started after the Zman. But even on this, says the Mishnah Berurah, unless you're worried you're going to miss the Zman, right? Like Amam B'Simin Kovav Be'er Al-Hacha. Misha Yagias, if Katan Lamed Aleph, says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu Mishala Amud HaShachar. Aval Kaidim Lazeh. Mutter afilu lahaschel k'shehizcha mamilo shavino paisik. Once you start, you don't stop. Unless she ever has man, unless you're worried you're going to miss this man. V'ishmakil lechatchila. There are those who make all filu achar shalom and hashachar goes man shayigez man samach lanit shayil ispal lechatchila. That if it didn't come to the lechatchila to get time to daven, there are those that are mikal, because when is he going to daven? He's going to daven at nights at the appropriate time to daven. And we continue with the Mishnah Berurah of Katalam Beis, which he taught us that's only if you're going to daven the Beis Midrashay. So comments to Mishnah Berurah, what does that mean? That you're just going to stop learning and you're going to daven by your own self. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's not a din Beis Medrash versus Beis HaKnesses. There's going to be a minion in the Beis Medrash, because they're going to remind you to come. This is the reason why Salach is not that relevant, because usually wherever we're going to be learning, we're going to have a minion as well, and therefore you're allowed to keep on learning until the minion starts. But what would the concern have been? Even someone who has a shir kavua, and therefore we're not so worried. There's a lot of people there, so we're not concerned. You might continue learning. Says the Chayadam Aser. ולכן מישהו בדרך הדר בישע ואפילו בקיץ אבל גב שמצווה להספל בשעת הסיפור מספלים כל מקום כיוון שעשה לא מקודש מספל says the Chayadam, you can't learn. So what are you going to do? מוטב שיספל, take it כדי שיספל מלימודי. Chayadam says daven by yourself so you don't miss learning. ובזמן הזה, says Mishnah Berurah, תעברי דרכים על פי רוב, ואינו להם נמתר בדרך, they don't learn on the road. ויאמר ישם דינו כל זמן שציפור מספל, they shall wait for the minion. They're going to miss the zmanim. Therefore, yizaru. Therefore, one has to be careful. Right away. But also came the kills get daylight. Take of shir ayim. If came lailamu b'shash tzibur mispalim is always going to be at tzibur. I can't shine of year. Let's samse b'isham mevarich al tefillin. Sheyuch lahakers chaver yichul talaram. So shexam lamal again reminds us the Mishnah Berurah that when you're making the bracha on tefillin, you have to make sure to do it after the zman of Misha Yakir, after the time that you can recognize your friend, and then you make the bracha on the tefillin. And of course, this is a very important halacha. It's called a shaymer. You want to learn, but you need a daven. So you tell your friend, remind me to daven, then it would be allowed. But if you're malamid acherim, but of course, even if you're giving a share to the public, you can't miss man kriya on the miyarish ever zman mechuyev likroisei kodim kivin shekvar yigia zman. If you're afraid you're going to miss the zman, you have to say it before the share. Come on, b'simin kof vav. For one moment, if we have Dirshu number 40 in front of us, which we do not, so we're going to call it a day and pick it up from Sif Zayin in the next shir.